going to move on to our next presentation. That's going to be from Matt Menegotto about starting a pawpaw orchard. Matt?
Hello, everybody. Nothing like following a PhD and an MD. A quick poll, who already has an established pawpaw orchard? Okay. Who wants to establish a pawpaw orchard? Okay, all the first people that raised your hand, just go ahead and take a nap so that you don't ask me questions at the end of this. So my name's Matt Menegotto, and I'm the orchardist over at Hang Loose Pawpaw Patch. It's about a 40-minute drive from here in Wilmore, Kentucky. We have 160 grafted trees on our 5-acre property, and my presentation today is on starting a pawpaw orchard for beginners. And I should say for beginners from a beginner. So. Here's a little picture that my 4-year-old son drew, and this is what I came up with for the logo. Just kidding, I drew that picture. Great artist, obviously. And the guy that did my artwork, I stole from the guy that does all the Ohio Pawpaw Festival artwork, so he did my logo too. First thing I want to preface what I kind of already said is I'm not an expert in the pawpaw field. I don't have a doctorate degree or come from a wealth of knowledge in horticulture. I'm just your average Joe gardener that had this idea. What I will say is that I've learned a lot in the past couple of years and was in some of your all's shoes. So what I have learned hopefully can be beneficial for you all. With that said, let's kind of get into it a little bit. Our house is positioned perfectly on our property with about an acre of grass behind the house and a half an acre of woods on each side of the house. 3 acres of grass in the front, and it being surrounded by woods on both sides, it's kind of going to give our orchard this natural windbreak. The 3 acres in the front was a totally blank canvas of grass. There was no trees or no brush around it, so that would mean I wouldn't have to clear anything before planting. You want your orchard in full sun because it's going to give your trees a heavier fruit set and make your trees stronger. My next step was to draw out a map, which you can see my artwork again, it's flawless. The first step you want to do is figure out where you want to put your trees. And how many you want to plant. I thought I wanted to plant around 300 trees, about 100 per acre, which I know you can plant more, but I wanted to start out basic. This is where I ran into my first problem. I went out to the grass in the front yard and noticed right away there was a giant rock formation sticking out of the ground. So planting 300 trees is no longer feasible. So I took a long piece of rebar and started walking around the property to see where I could fit these trees. The closer I got to the house, the more shallow the soil got. Some areas were only about 2 feet of soil before you started hitting rock. So instead of the original 300 trees, we planted around 160. So after you've laid out your farm map, it's time to make the rows. For me, I enlisted the help of my neighbor across the street, which my kids like to call Tractor Tommy. What I did was measured out the rows in the grass with a measuring tape and put flags on each end of the row. And then I sprayed my line down the middle from flag to flag. This gave me the exact middle of each row. And I then measured my rows to make sure they were at least 10 feet away from the driveway, and I wanted 8-foot spacing in between my trees. One of our rows was also near a city water line, which you need to be careful of, so you need to be at least 10 feet away from the water lines. I know I wanted rows to be 4 feet wide, So what I did was I measured 2 feet in each direction from the middle of the row and sprayed a little dot. I did this on each of the rows and did it multiple times running down the rows. And then I measured 16 feet from dot to dot, and that gave me the area in between the rows of the trees. Make sure you're measuring this in multiple places so that all your rows can be at least 16 feet from each other. After that, as you can see from that picture, Tommy just put the tiller on its lowest setting and let it rip down the row. We did the tilling twice with 6 weeks in between. And then if you have the time, lay down some landscape fabric before winter to kill off the grass. It'll make things a lot easier for you. So after all your tilling is done, you want to get on these steps pretty quickly afterwards. I call this the layering method. The first layer you want to put down on your tilled soil is a heavy layer of compost or properly aged manure. I made friends with the equine program director at our local university down the street. He gives me all the manure I can handle. Just make sure when you're looking for a supplier that they use no herbicides or pesticides on their farm, or it's in the hay that they feed the horses. The more compost and manure you put down on this layer, the better. So on top of that layer, next you want to cover your compost and manure with a thick layer of cardboard. The main source for my cardboard was my wife's Amazon orders for 2 years. But even that wasn't enough, which really surprised me. So I contacted my local dollar store. And then after that cardboard layer, you want to lay down a thick layer of mulch. The thicker, the better. I have another buddy with a dump truck. I have a lot of buddies. So we drove straight down the row with his dump truck, and I was in the back just dumping out all the mulch. After you've completed this step, I aged my rows for a year. I know a lot of people suggest maybe aging them for 2 years. I think that might have been better, but it was fine just aging it a year. So after that, you're ready to plant. So while your rows are aging, you need to decide on what kind of trees you want to order. For me, this was a no-brainer. I ordered grafted name cultivars. If some of you that are rookies don't know what a grafted tree is, it's true to taste. You're taking a piece of an existing tree that has proven to be a heavy producer and will taste just like the tree you took the graft from. Another plus with the grafted trees will be that they tend to produce sooner. For me, it was 4 years in the ground. Tree age is another key component on choosing which trees to order. Being a natural understory tree, pawpaws are very susceptible to sun damage in its first year or two of life. Many people struggle with planting younger trees, and most of the time they will die if not properly taken care of. If you wanted to go a cheaper route and buy smaller trees, you'll need to protect them for their first 2 years of life or until they're over 18 inches tall in the ground. You can do this in many different ways. I suggest high quality breathable tree tubes or maybe a tomato cage with a shade cloth wrapped around it. And then after those first 2 years in the ground, they should be able to tolerate full sun and survive a lot easier. The next thing you should think about is potted versus bare root trees. For me, this was another no-brainer. Quick lesson for those of you who don't know what bare root trees are. They're trees that were in the ground and then dug up and then shipped to you. Pawpaws have a very long taproot and a very delicate root system. This can be easily damaged when somebody digs them up and ships them to you. If they aren't damaged when they're dug up, then they could easily be damaged when they're shipped to you. I 100% would buy pawpaws that have been grown in pots. But you need to make sure that these pots have aged with the tree. With the taproot being so big, it can easily be damaged if they weren't transferred to the correct size as the tree aged out. So always ask what size pots your pawpaws are coming in. The next thing you want to decide is where you're going to get your trees from. Not all nurseries are created equal, and for me, customer service went a long way. If they're willing to answer 100 questions for you before your trees are ordered, they're most likely to answer them if you have any problems or after your trees are ordered. The other thing you want to look for when you're ordering your trees is what kind of guarantee they're going to put on your trees. I placed an order for over 150 trees, so I wanted to make sure that I was covered in some regard. I decided on Nash Nurseries in Owasso, Michigan for my first purchase of trees. Big shout out to my lady Kathy for all her hard work and countless responses to my novice emails. Kathy, John and Bill, who are here today from Nash Nurseries, big shout out, guys. They were very simple to deal with in the whole process and answer any of my questions. These guys, great guys, big wealth of knowledge, so I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions for you. I ended up ordering 130 trees where the graft was already 2 years old, and 40 trees where the graft was 1 year old. And that's my initial order right there. The guarantee that I got from Nash was that the trees were guaranteed to arrive healthy and leafed out and survive before planting. And then after planting, they were guaranteed for 50% of the purchase price to survive for up to a year, which I thought was more than fair. All right, tree planting. The first thing you want to do before planting is decide on a date. I would pick a Saturday or Sunday after the last frost when it's still a bit cool outside, but the nights are not too chilly. We picked a Saturday and Sunday in the first weekend of May in Kentucky, and we timed it perfectly, and I coordinated it with my nursery to have the trees delivered on a Friday, and we began planting on that Saturday. So this next step is huge. You need to ask as many friends or family members or arch nemesis to come help you plant these trees. Some people, and I've seen this, which I thought was cool, but I found it out afterwards, even host planting days, and they advertise it publicly. I thought that was a great idea. But we planted over 150 trees in rows, 100 seedlings in the forest, and then I had a whole bunch of other fruits and vegetables that we all planted too. So everybody was ready for a nice beer after that was all done. Okay, so after everything is planned out and you've enlisted your help, the next thing you want to do is put flags where you want each hole to go. I would do this a couple days before your help, and trees are going to show up. So after our flags were in the ground, we were ready to dig the holes. Now, our rows were nice and soft as we had aged them for a year, so it didn't take much effort to dig our holes. So the first thing you want to do is dig a hole and test the size. You want to be able to stick the potted tree in the hole and have the bottom of the trunk where it meets the soil in the pot level with the surface of the ground. The hole itself needs to be twice the width of the pot. Then once you think that you have the correct size of the hole, it's time to take the tree out of the pot, which needs to be done very carefully. Do not backfill the hole with any decomposing material. Just make sure it's soil. We do add some mycorrhizal inoculant to our holes, and for those of you that don't know what that is, it's a fungi that will help make your pawpaw tree roots stronger and help your trees grow faster. We feel like it helped our trees get off to a good start, and I use it when I plant all my other fruits and vegetables. Also, make sure you don't put mulch right up against the tree's trunk, because it could potentially rot out your young trees. And then after you plant your tree, just make sure you water it deeply. So installing an irrigation system isn't necessary if you only have a couple of trees. Some pawpaw orchards don't install an irrigation system at all. But for me, having 150 trees and 3 young boys under the age of 3, I thought this was absolutely necessary. Pawpaw trees need about an inch of rain per week, sometimes a little more when it's really hot outside. So we have this drip irrigation system lined up to release a gallon of water per hour. We water 4 times a week for 30 minutes at a time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. We water at 6 a.m. each morning, and we will not water our trees midday. Our drip irrigation system is made up of vinyl hose tubing, and it's designed for orchards, and then we individually wrapped it around each tree. The tubing lays on the ground below our landscape fabric, and the tubing itself is circled around each tree so that it can adequately water not only the tree itself, but also the tree root system. You don't want to put the irrigation system right up against the tree's trunk again, so just give the trees room to grow. Okay, so I took this picture last week, so that kind of gives you an idea of what our orchard currently looks like. So you have all your trees planted, and the mulch and compost is around them. Your irrigation system is installed, and everything's looking great. Now it's time for your trees to grow. But one thing a lot of people will warn you about with pawpaws is that they're very susceptible to weed damage. Younger pawpaws need to stay away from weeds and other vegetation around them, as they will compete for water. Most of the time, if young pawpaws are surrounded by weeds or just planted in the grass, they will lose and die. I would suggest at least a 2-foot circle around each tree, weed and vegetation free. So in that case, we decided to lay down a layer of landscape fabric in our rows. I did a lot of research for what I thought might be the best fabric to lay down, and I decided on, it's called Do It Sunbelt 4-foot wide weed barrier landscape ground cover. I was told that this should last 5 to 7 years before it needs to be replaced. And then once it comes time to replace it, I was going to lay down another layer of cardboard and then another layer of heavy mulch on top of that. Just make sure you get some at least 6-inch long stakes for landscape fabric, because we are starting to have a little trouble now with the stakes coming up, so make sure you get some decently long ones. And if anybody has any specific questions on how to lay this landscape fabric down, just come and find me. It's a little different process when you already have trees in the ground and bigger trees. But once you're done laying down your fabric, you also want to cut a circle around each tree to give the tree some room to breathe and be able to add the fertilizer that you want to put down. The final thing that I decided to do before winter, while it's still not too cold or wet outside, was paint all of the trunks white. I think you can kind of see a little bit on some of them, but all of the trees are painted. This will need to be repeated yearly. I went with interior white latex paint. I mixed the paint with neem oil and hydrated lime. Just make sure your paint mixture is pretty thick so that you don't have to go around and do a whole second coat on your trees. And I do this to protect against southwest injury as well as various pests. So after you've done all that, you've got yourself a pawpaw orchard. So that's it.
We have time for a question. If anybody's got a question, I'll have them bring the microphone over to you.
Can you talk a little bit about financing this, and also how do you convince your wife to let you do this?
That's a very good question. I prefer not to answer it. Just kidding. I supported my wife for a very long time, so when we moved back to Kentucky, she was like, you can do whatever you want. So that's kind of what I'm rolling with now, but that's it.